All right. Thank you for joining us this evening. Okay, if we could have quiet, please. Before we begin our meeting, I'd like to welcome Mr. Hines to our commission. Up until now, Mr. Hines, I've been the newest member. Now I'm going to pass that mantle on to you. I would be remiss if I did not extend a huge thank you to Keith Powell for the 35 years he has given to this commission and to our town. As a practicing attorney in town, Keith's professional expertise and institutional knowledge has been invaluable. In turn, this has enhanced and benefited our commission's knowledge base and thereby been of great value to the town of Bel Air. We wish Keith well and hopes he knows that he will be sorely missed. Now I'd like to open the meeting.
Madam Chairman, I move that the minutes of the Planning Commission for March the 7th, 2024 be approved as submitted.
Second.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
members of the commission, there was a typographical error on page 9 of the minutes. At the very top, it reads, gave an example of exacting and how they used funds to make reservations to Homestead Park. So it should be renovations. So I assume that amendment would be accepted by the board.
Thank you.
Move the amendment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Kevin, if you would present the first old business? No.
Yeah, one abstention.
Oh, I abstain.
Oh, you weren't there
I
either?
was not
And
here.
Jim, he can't.
Right, so you have 2
3-0.
abstentions and
Right.
3 yeas. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, this, the first item on the list is the Hartford Mall residences. The residences of Hartford Mall were approved a couple of months ago, but there was a condition of that approval that required the applicant to come back and show you more detail on the streetscape version or the streetscape area, which would be on the south side of the building. This south side is the side that is exposed to the inner portion of the mall property and is likely to be the most touched by pedestrians and folks who would be utilizing the mall in the future. So they have done that. They've submitted, and you have that in your package. One thing to note here is that there is no reconsideration of the site plan approval or the landscape plan approval or the subdivision or the special development. Those all stand. They were approved. They were finalized with no appeal. So therefore, what the options that you have in front of you for this streetscape is to, one, you can approve it without any conditions. You can approve it with conditions, or you can have them, if there's issues that you'd like to see further developed, you can have them come back next month. Okay?
Thank you.
The condition number 4 under the site plan approval letter dated January 4th, 2024 requires revision to the streetscape design as provided in the submitted plan. A revision note dated November 16th is listed on the landscape plan referencing streetscape and street tree species. As the date of this review, no final plan sheets have been submitted to the town. This revision to the streetscape, if approved, will need to be reflected on the final plans associated with the reference site and landscape plan. Comments in the original staff report dated October 25th and the supplemental staff report dated November 28th request additional attention be paid to the streetscape on the south side. These comments focus on the need for more pedestrian-friendly design and additional amenities typically associated with an urban environment. Based on the revised master plan dated November 15th, 2023, this edge of the development will face directly to the public gathering area, and it is anticipated that a significant number of pedestrian traffic will utilize this space, which is at the confluence of the remaining buildings. It is assumed there will be corresponding level of community activity, and that will demand more need for amenities such as pedestrian scale lighting, benches, landscape, special paving, and other items typically associated with urban streets. The applicant's consultant has prepared and submitted a detailed enlargement of the desired area and a landscape plan for the Planning Commission review. The Department of Planning and Community Development has reviewed these plans and offers the following comments. Plans should be updated to show handicapped accessible ramps at appropriate locations. There are just a few crosswalks. They're not shown with the ramps. We assume that'll be shown on the final plan. The landscape proposed is appropriate. However, the details for the stormwater management plantings should be provided to the planning department during the final review of stormwater management. Normally, we don't look at stormwater management plantings, but because this is right in the middle of everything, that the area associated with stormwater management and the plantings there will need to be reviewed and with a little bit more detail to its appearance. The 9 spaces of parallel parking along the east end of the drive should be adjusted to allow for a space for the existing crosswalk at mid-block. There is a crossing there, and we can certainly talk about when the applicant gets up. This would keep that crosswalk active when the mall, since the mall still exists. At some point when it goes away, maybe that crosswalk goes away. It's recommended that the lighting along the edge will be ornamental. These locations will be shown, or should be shown on a detail of the fixture, with detail of a fixture type associated with, provided by to the town. Bike storage is not shown on the plan, but it was described by the applicant that bike racks would be provided interior to the building. Hartford County Public School System requested a bus stop location. This is not directly related to the streetscape request. The HCPS comment came late in the review process, and the town reminds the applicant that the approved location will need to be shown on the final plans.
So I have a question about that, Kevin. I know when we were reviewing all this, people were talking about a bump out so that the bus would come up, do one of these, pick them up, and then go out. I don't know that the Board of Education approves those bump outs. If you're asking for a bus stop, it would just be a place indicated where the bus would stop.
Right, and that's really, it's something where I don't want to get in between Hartford County Public Schools and the applicant. Whatever makes Hartford County Public Schools happy is fine with us. I know that they typically do not want buses going interior to any site.
No, that's right. Well, they were talking about as you go down the street and then, a little bump out where they would park, and they were talking about maybe a little pavilion with a student. That's
pretty elaborate for.
Totally unnecessary, I can assure you.
Yeah,
Just where are you going to pick them up?
exactly.
And I'll bet there will be 5 students out there at the most.
What is there
Yeah.
about this particular site that would make it have to be different than pretty much every other site where the bus puts its red lights on, stops traffic, and picks up kids?
Not necessarily anything except for the fact that Bolton Street is going to be a rather busy road, and the and the 249 units will probably produce a sizable amount of students. So
I think weren't we told
Not bad.
15 was the estimate?
Yep.
15 total students among several different
yeah, so if you're
schools.
talking 5, it might be 5 per
Just
grade.
seems to me, and Pete would know better, he's a bus driver, but it just seems like the process that works everywhere else could work right there.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Just
Yeah, just
indicate where you want the children to meet the bus.
Right.
And,
Yeah, that's not something that would be, we
and they
would
would
want to
be-
get in the way of.
They would be picked up, you'd pick them up street side, or sidewalk side.
Right.
They wouldn't have to cross the street. That's what I think the public school, Hartford County Public Schools is most concerned about, is
Yes.
if they don't cross the street. Yeah.
Yeah.
yes.
And
So-
if we're talking 15 students, I think that would be total.
Right.
Elementary, middle, and high school.
Yes.
I mean, you might have,
Just by frame of reference, I was coming up from my other hometown this morning, and it was early, and I'm on Delaware 1, not the interstate type part, but the four-lane road, car, 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, which means they're going 70, and it was school bus time, and the bus just did what they do everywhere else, stopped, went from yellow to red, and everybody stopped, and that was that. I
Yep.
mean, it's didn't seem to be much of an issue.
Right, yeah, and we're not asking for anything on this submitted plan. We're just saying that that's got to be a conversation that needs to be
Right.
happening. There are trees shown on the west side of the proposed building which appear to be away from the road and several feet below in elevation. They seem to be, and that just needs to be explained a little bit better. In addition, no trees are shown on the east side of the building. The applicants requested to provide additional explanation regarding that. Sidewalks, east and west sides are shown on the landscape, or streetscape plan, but not on the landscape plan. It's just a drafting issue. Pressed concrete paving is shown along the streetscape, however, it shows different colors. Typically, when you're doing pressed concrete paving, and let's say you're doing an edge, and that edge is a different color than the field of paving, it's hard to do that with pressed concrete, because you're either doing it one of two ways. You're throwing a color agent into the concrete truck when it arrives, and everything comes out that color, or you're doing what they call a color hardener, which is sprinkled on. The town doesn't really like that, but that's really more of up to the applicant. What happens is if something is shaken on like that, the color only goes about that far into the concrete. So anything that's stripped up, you see the concrete color, the gray concrete color. So anyway, that's an issue that we'd like to at least discuss. Majority of the comments are minor, can be easily addressed in the final landscape and site plans. Applicant should incorporate changes to the streetscape plan and provide revisions to this town for its records. In addition, landscape plan titled STO1 should be added to the final plan submission with the same revisions. So we're just asking for that blow up of this area to be added to the submission package. At a minimum, approval of streetscape plans is conditioned on addressing comments in the memorandum and incorporating these changes into the final site plan and landscape plan.
Okay, thank you. Representative, please.
Hi, I'm Kate Pierce. I'm a landscape architect with Frederick Ward Associates, 5 South Main Street.
Maybe pull that a little closer.
Hold on.
So,
Yeah. Try again.
Is this better?
No.
Trying to figure out why that is the case. Hold on. Can't figure out why it says it's on. So.
I'll just try. Oh, there we go.
So that's it.
Okay. Oh. I'm Kate Pierce. I'm a landscape architect with Frederick Ward Associates, 5 South Main Street. And we're here to talk about the streetscape at the Hartford Mall redevelopment. Per condition number 4, like Kevin stated earlier, we were required to submit a revised streetscape plan to for Planning Commission approval. Our goal was to provide a more pedestrian-friendly streetscape that will set the tone for the experience of the proposed apartments and the remainder of the site. And we drew inspiration from downtown Bel Air and curated a design that reflects the character and style of the surrounding area. The first plan I'm showing is the site plan that we submitted the last go-around, just as a refresher. And then kind of the layout of how the apartment building will be on the first floor. And as you can see, the amenity space goes all the way through. That was designed that way to accommodate the bus stop so that students had an indoor place to wait to get on the bus. All right, and then this is our updated streetscape plan. We incorporated a mix of different stamped concretes of different texture and color to differentiate the entrances from walkways and to create a strong connection to the proposed building. We increased the foundation plantings around the building to soften the appearance, and we also provided benches, landscape tree pits, and planting beds to create a more pedestrian-friendly and pedestrian-scale streetscape. We reviewed the town's comments, and we will be, upon approval of the streetscape, we will be updating all of the plans to reflect the new streetscape layout. I know that in the town's comments, they wanted us to speak to, one second. And then we also included a rendering, and like Kevin said, the sidewalks that aren't shown on this original plan, that's a drafting error. There'll definitely be sidewalks on the west and east side of the building. And this is a rendering of what we're proposing the streetscape to look like, so you can see that there's different textures, colors to the streetscape. Additional plantings were included to kind of make it more pedestrian-friendly and a little bit more like downtown Bel Air. And then this is just a graphic showing some of the plants that were proposed on the planting plan. We're trying to provide seasonal interest as much as we can to make sure that it is beautiful year-round. And then to the question from the town about the trees located on the west side of the building, they were just offset so that they were a little bit further away from the sidewalk so that there was no interference with the sidewalk as the trees grew. That's an easy thing. We can adjust and move them closer to the sidewalk if that's something that the town wishes to see.
Is there a retaining wall along that side?
On the east side, there's a retaining wall.
Okay.
On the east side, there is a retaining wall and a utility easement that runs along that side for a relocated water line, which is why we don't have trees shown on that side. We did provide the required amount of street trees. They're just not necessarily in that area because of the water line, the retaining wall, and there were space limitations.
Okay. Is there the possibility of putting in smaller, or like ornamental trees that are 10 feet off the water
So, 10 feet off the water line only gives you about 2 feet of space before you're right on the retaining wall.
line? Okay. Can you be down below the retaining wall?
We can take a look.
Or is that in
at-
the stormwater?
That's in the stormwater.
Okay. All right. We'll
Yeah.
take a look at it, but that
But-
sounds like you got the answers.
Yep.
So-
But I think this reflects a lot of the characteristics of downtown Bel Air and kind of the vibe and aesthetic that we're all trying to provide here.
How tall is the retaining wall on the east side?
3 to 4 feet?
3 to 4 feet? Is it possible to do a half retaining wall so you could put plantings in that aren't trees, but like some of the flowers that you showed along that side, so that you staggered it like this? So you would have plantings and they wouldn't necessarily be in the ground, but they,
Or shrubs instead of trees?
We could look into doing shrubs. Shrubs can be within the
Yeah.
10-feet limit of the water
just to
line.
break it up a little bit. They should, assuming the water was.
Yeah, we just don't want to plant trees that
I
close
got
to
you.
a
Yeah,
water
yeah,
line
I
to
know exactly.
impact it, but we can take a look at adding additional shrubs to that area.
Okay.
Could you explain to me the rectangular portion of,
So that rectangular portion is a stormwater management facility. And that's usually designed and planted when we submit our stormwater management plans. But the town has asked to be able to review that along with our submission to stormwater management. So when we get to that point, we will definitely keep you in the loop. It'll be designed more to be aesthetically pleasing than a traditional stormwater management facility. There'll be a lot more intention and design and intent put into this one because it's definitely a focal point for the front of the building.
additional comments? Okay, all right. Was there anyone else who wished to speak, or? Okay. So, go ahead. Yeah. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak at all? Okay, thank you very much. So we need an approval proposed.
Just wanted to clarify that these numerous, you've addressed some of these recommendations that staff included. Are there any of these that are troubling?
No.
So we can assume then if we give this our not of approval, that, yep, that's all gonna be
They're all
done.
pretty straightforward,
Okay.
and a lot of them will be updated when we submit.
They're
the
referred to
final
as
plans.
minor, but I just didn't wanna, okay.
All right.
Well, before you go, how about the concrete? You had said different colors, so how is the colors going to be? blended
So
into the
that's something we're
concrete?
gonna have to investigate a little bit more. I know that the town would prefer us to use pavers, but I know that the developer would prefer to use mixed concrete because of price point and
Well,
availability.
Well, pavers are nice. I think for a project like this, I would concur with the developer that concrete would be better. But I'm just kind of curious whether we get 4 inches of color or, an inch of color that gets chipped off later on.
Tom Miner, Frederick Ward. Just for the stamped concrete options, we would want to do a full depth, a full mix, not just a sprinkle on top. Definitely on board with that. The concern sometimes with pavers is that it has a tendency to kind of long-term fall apart a little bit more than concrete.
They tend to.
Yeah, buckle movement, you can put concrete underneath of it, but it's just, concrete holds up a little bit better. What I've done in the past when we want to have that border is that you do it in 2 separate pours, similar to when you're doing a curb and a sidewalk. So you're doing your mix, it's a large enough area where we're going to need a truck, at least multiple trucks, even when we're doing the small strip.
Do you do an expansion joint in between them, or?
You really don't need to do an expansion joint. I honestly am not a big fan of joints because it means maintenance, and they're generally not necessary. You do contraction and construction joints where you're going to do a saw cut or something, but otherwise, typically not. But that's what, to remediate that issue of having 2 different colored materials, you would just do it in 2 separate pours. But yeah, we want it to be the concrete through and through because, you get that little bit of spalling or anything else, the color changes. It doesn't look good for an entrance. I mean, that's the main entrance to the building.
Right.
So,
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
So you are considering the 2 colors, is that, yeah?
At this point, we're considering 2 to 3 colors to match the outside of the building.
Nice, okay. Thank you. So, do I have a motion for approval?
Yeah, this is a little different procedurally than what we usually do. We've already approved all the key components, but our consensus, I move that our consensus is that we accept and agree to the staff report of April the 18th as a condition, supporting the conditions that were imposed in the original approval.
Do I have a second?
Well,
Or
Do you
we
want to
need
add
that?
the shrubs on the?
can we add the shrubs to the east side and
Yep.
concur that it's going to be full depth color concrete?
Somebody
So
need to second
amended.
that. Yeah.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay.
Annual report.
Okay, this is the annual report for 2023. It's been in front of you twice before, and I think I've finally gotten it right, but we'll see. Each one of you should have a separate version of the latest version of that report. What we've changed on there was we got a lot of grammatical and spelling comments during the when we went in front of the town board. And so we corrected those. And one of the big items is that there was, the way this report works is it looks at the comprehensive plan and it measures it under in the rear appendix. It measures how each of the goals and objectives have been achieved. So if you take the comprehensive plan and you separate out all those goals and objectives, then what we're doing is we're saying whether or not they're completed, in progress, or have not been started regarding the, and this is a 10-year plan and you're in the 2nd year of it, so it's not too many things have been done yet. But that's been corrected because before what was happening and what was noted by the town board was that a lot of those items seemed to be conflated together. And so if you look at the goals and objectives in the comp plan and you look at the appendix of this report, they are the same. So all you're not proposing anything new, anything associated with police or whatnot, requirements, those are in the comp plan, and this is all you're doing is measuring whether or not those have been achieved. So with that, that's all I've got for the annual report. You've seen it a couple of times, so.
All right. Do you need any type of confirmation on that, or?
I need an approval.
Okay.
Move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. I assume you want me to sign?
I got the one to sign.
Okay. Do you have a pen? I'm sorry. Got it. That's fine. And today is the. Thank you. And now for the new business.
Okay. All right, that was old business. Now we're looking at new business. This is 321 West Hall Street, which is odd because it's addressed off of Hall Street, and it just doesn't seem like it would be, but anyway, that's the address. Before I start, is the applicant here? Aha, thank you. So the requested action is a special development approval to convert the existing detached garage into an accessory dwelling unit. The property is zoned R1, low-density residential, and when in the R1, accessory dwelling unit is a special development. I'm going to skip over the items here for existing conditions. The applicant, again, is requesting a special development approval for the accessory dwelling unit in R1. The proposal is to convert an existing detached 572 square foot garage into an accessory dwelling unit. The owner provided a sketch of the floor plan, which is attached. This plan is a little difficult to read, so we're going to ask the applicant to explain that a little further. The performance standards for accessory dwelling unit are that, let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to skip over to that. The applicant's owners provided annotated performance standards sheet for an accessory dwelling unit. During their presentation to the Planning Commission, the applicant must expand upon their statement regarding the occupant of the ADU or accessory dwelling unit. Who is going to occupy it? Expand upon their statement regarding the provision of adequate parking given the loss of existing garage parking. Explain the lack of needed buffering from the neighboring lots. There's no proposed buffering. That doesn't mean that there has to be proposed buffering, but an explanation of that is asked for. Explain the description of the half-story on both structures, both the house and the ADU. It says 1.5 stories. I don't know what that means. So if there is habitable space up top, that's got to be included in the square footage number. Further explain the existing floor plan of the detached garage. So the site's generally sloping 2 or 3%. The site exceeds the minimum required parcel size of 10,000 square feet. That's one of your performance standards. The existing dwelling has an existing non-conforming front setback on Mapleview Drive, 32 feet in lieu of the required 35 feet. However, they're not asking for that property to be adjusted or that building to be adjusted. As a corner lot, there is no rear yard. There are 2 front yards and 2 side yards. The application excuse me, it indicates that the existing detached garage is requested to be converted into an ADU. without change to the footprint of the garage building. The existing garage building meets the required yard setbacks for a corner lot parcel. However, the existing detached garage is an existing non-conforming accessory structure, as its floor area of 572 square feet exceeds the 50% limit of the floor area for an accessory structure, meaning normally an accessory structure cannot be more than 50% of the principal structure on the property.
Is the 570, that's including ground floor and the potential upstairs, or
That,
not?
we didn't have the information to make that evaluation, so that's why the applicant needs to explain the 1.5 stories. How much additional floor area is up there? So that's something that still needs to be explored. Site plan needs to be revised to correct the ownership and parcel number of 608 Mapleview Drive. Provide a survey benchmark, add a signature blocks and certification blocks to the plan, which we will provide. Add dimensions for distance from existing house and proposed ADU to the adjacent property lines. Add dimensions and footprint area to the existing detached garage in the principal structure. Revise the notes and labels to indicate the accessory dwelling unit rather than the cottage dwelling. The town has, one of the things that I think are being, mistakes are being made in this time between, there has been changes to the code in June and now, because it's not reflected on the website. We hope to have that corrected here in about 2 weeks. But what's happening is people are looking at the cottage house, which is the old code, and we have the accessory dwelling unit, which is a new code. There's not a whole lot of change there, but there is a little enough to make it significant. So, let's see. As far as the special development, the use needs to be limited to extended family members only, the owners of the primary residence, or it can be a caregiver for a person residing in the primary residence. The principal dwelling must be owner occupied, and the use shall discontinue as soon as the designated unit is vacated for more than 12 months. If somebody leaves and there's nobody replacing them within 12 units, the use is no longer approved. It's no longer, you can't grandfather it, let's put it that way.
Okay.
The parcel on which the accessory dwelling unit is located must be minimum 10,000 square feet. I think we talked about that. Fire code inspection and tax application must be provided to the town. We have to make sure that it's a safe dwelling, which will happen because they're going through a process for building permit. And the guidelines that, they're not standards, but guidelines, that these are things that you can apply should you feel it's necessary. Provision of adequate parking and buffering, lease criteria and operating information, structure, size, capacity, and location of the unit. We're recommending 2 conditions. The applicant provides a signed affidavit to the town acknowledging the occupant restrictions as provided in the section 165-53. And the applicant constructs 2 parking pads off the existing driveway to accommodate the anticipated occupant parking. With that, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
How you doing?
Good. I'm Steve Kaplan, so I own 321 West Hall Street. And so I'm trying to turn a garage that already exists into an apartment. I bought the property 3 months ago, and the only reason I bought the property is because this garage exists. The house is small, was built in the 50s, it's tiny. But the garage already was built, and looks like the previous owner was going to turn it into an apartment, but stopped short of it. It already has plumbing, it already has HVAC, it already has everything. I just wanted to make it a legal apartment. I didn't want it to just not be registered. But, so I haven't done any work to it. I haven't done anything yet, but it already is an apartment. I think the previous owner decided to actually make it a workshop as opposed to a legal whatever. So, so with that being said, I heard that the square footage of the garage is slightly over what it can be to be a legal accessory dwelling unit. There's not much I can do about that. I can't knock off a few, you know what I mean? The house is tiny, and I can't really make a garage smaller since it was already built. So, I mean, yes, it is 20 square feet larger than it should be.
Hang on one second. Before you go further, is a family member going to be living?
Correct.
Okay.
So we have lots of
Clarifying, 'cause
sons.
you're-
Some of
you're
them
talking
are,
apartment, and I just-
correct. Well, yeah, I call it an apartment. It's really just going to be another bedroom because the house is only 2 bedrooms. But we have 4 sons and more that actually don't live in the house at the moment. So anyway, I was going to have the oldest boy live in the garage, which would be an apartment. But I didn't want somebody to come back and complain and say, hey, somebody's living in this guy's garage, and I come in and say, hey, this is not a garage, it's an apartment, and it's legal. But to address the 1.5 floors, there is an attic space. You pull down the ladder and you can go up there. That's where the hot water heater was installed, the furnace, electric, some ducting for the HVAC, but it's not habitable. You can't, it's not finished.
Is that, I'm sorry, is that on both the house and the garage? Neither one
Just
of
the
them are
garage.
habitable? Okay.
Just the garage has when it says 1.5, the garage has a
Storage space.
storage space, but it's not habitable, and it never will be. I don't have any intention of making it.
Is the house itself have any habitable space above in the, because it's listed
Yes.
as 1.5 stories?
The house has a finished attic with a full bathroom upstairs.
Okay, is that included in the square footage you provided?
Of the garage?
Of the house?
I
What I'm
don't
trying to
know.
get at is if you have habitable space above the existing house,
Yeah.
or in the, what I would call the attic of the existing house,
Mhm.
that square footage can be counted towards your, the
Sure.
ratio between that house and the garage.
I don't think it is because the house is listed as a 2-bedroom, but the main floor has 2 bedrooms. But the attic is finished, which is where I sleep.
Okay.
So I have 4 kids currently sleeping in 2 bedrooms on the first floor. And I sleep in the attic, which is finished. But I don't think it is listed in the square footage.
The half story of the garage, is that, can you stand up in it? Is the space open
You can
enough?
stand, but only in the center, because it's sloped. And there's nails coming in from the roof. So you really can't, it's not really usable, I mean, unless you want to puncture yourself. I mean, yes, it could eventually, with some significant amount of money, be turned into a bedroom or something, but not in my lifetime, so.
Does the occupancy as he's describing it, well, perfectly suitable, does this fit the rules of the regulation?
Without knowing the square footage of
No,
what's.
not talking about that, I'm just talking about, in my mind, I was expecting to hear there was some caregiver needed or somebody that needed assistance.
Well, there may be eventually. The plan is my elderly parents, many years from now, will probably live there.
That would be my understanding, is
Yeah.
that if he had elderly parents or a special needs child or something of that kind, then that's what this was for, and I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing a
Well,
very rational use
no,
of a
He can have his
structure.
son
That's
there, and
okay.
that meets the requirements.
That meets the requirement.
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you, go ahead.
So the other issue is parking. I think if you look in the picture, you can see that my neighbors have 4 full-size cars in their driveway. And I measured my driveway versus theirs, and my driveway is the same width. And in fact, I already have 4 full-size cars in the driveway. So the need for additional cars isn't really needed. And we don't use the inside of the garage now as a garage. So it's not like I'm taking a car out and now need to put it somewhere. Because currently, the inside of the garage is an apartment waiting to happen. I don't have a car sitting inside there. So there's not like an extra vehicle that I need to find a place for. And the intention is it's going to go to a son who's only going to have 1 car. So there's not, I don't know, I don't really need to find additional parking anywhere. So to address it's not really so I see in the verbiage it says to construction of an accessory dwelling, it's already constructed. I was really just trying to make it legal. In fact, everything is there, full plumbing.
Do you have a kitchen?
Yeah, everything is there, HVAC, everything is there. In fact, I might even I was gonna take one of the there's a wall right in the center, it's a 2-bedroom garage, that I think he was gonna make a bedroom and a kitchen. I'm gonna take the wall out of the center, which is not structural, and make it just a 1 big bedroom studio apartment for the kid.
My impression is that you've submitted a building permit application to the Department of Public Works. Am I wrong?
I was going to, but was told not to until this was resolved.
Okay.
which is also why I haven't finished putting the bathroom back together and putting the cabinets on the walls, et cetera, because I didn't want to finish and then be told I need to take something apart. So,
Gotcha.
When I drove over to the property, this unit is very close to your neighbors. Did you consider, or would you consider landscape buffering, like
well,
arborvitae?
so the neighbor that's on Hall Street, is that what you mean?
No, on Maple
Maple?
View.
So that would be these guys, are my closest neighbors. And there's currently already a vacant spot there, which I'm never going to build anything onto. But at some point, there's going to be a fence, a high privacy fence, that just, comes with time. I've only been there 3 months. But, so at some point, I'll put a privacy fence around the backside of both sides of the property. So I've already put up a fence in the front, and eventually there'll be one in the back. But I don't plan on building anything additional back there.
Is there anything that Kevin, has to be resolved as far as it being Maple View and Hall Street? Was there an issue needed to correct that?
As the address?
Mm-hmm.
No. No, it's just odd. I just saw it as odd. 'Cause he
Yeah, it
faces
is,
on
it is
Maple View.
technically West Hall Street,
Yeah.
but it just depends on, Amazon says it's West Hall Street, and the utilities say it's West Hall Street, but my deed does not, so.
Actually, what Amazon says usually really
Yeah.
bad.
My packages don't make it otherwise. Okay, so yeah, this is actually a slightly older photo, because you can see that the previous owner had some kind of large garden space in between the garage and their residence, which no longer exists. So before I moved in, they must have removed all that. So the only thing that actually exists is the primary residence and the white garage and that shed that's behind there. And none of the other stuff is there anymore. There is a white picket fence around the primary residence, and eventually there'll be a privacy fence between that house with the pool, well, both houses with pools. There'll be a privacy fence there eventually.
That you're building
Yeah.
along
Uh,
your Maple
I'd say at
View
least a year.
here?
Yeah, one there and one,
Here?
exactly.
Okay.
So one
That
going
could-
both ways.
Somewhat negate any need for landscape. Now, you don't have to, you can make that a condition, but it's up to you.
Mr. Hines, you want to ask anything?
No, I know the property well, been by it dozens of times
Oh,
over the years. I know that property. I agree with what your assessment of the parking. You still got room in front of your house for 5 vehicles at least,
sure.
plus the ones that are in your driveway, so I personally don't see a need to add parking spaces. That'd be my only comment. And if it's legal to utilize that square footage on that second level of his main house, that might bring him in compliance, I would think.
Could, yes.
So I made a drawing, I know it's crude, of the interior,
I think that was attached to the.
but that was only because I thought that the plat that was turned in from Thompson's that I hired to do the survey, I thought that was going to be included, the full thing. It wasn't until afterwards I realized, or was told, that it was missing certain things. So I just did a rough interior square footage, so I might be off by 10 or 20 feet. Well, not 10 or 20 feet, but 10 or 20 total square feet, but, yeah, I mean, there's nothing really I'm actually constructing.
So we're done. Any more questions before we ask the public to speak?
Madam Chair.
I'd like to hear from the neighbors, but I have no other questions. You might be interested to know, I bet you don't, that Mr. Schler would remember that right across the street there was hallowed grounds. That was the.
You mean this place?
Yeah.
Well, that's funny you say that, because,
Yeah, right there.
yeah, we're friends with the owner there, and they invited us to put animals and different things that we have on a farm in Gettysburg, hairy cows and chickens, et cetera. But
That was
there's a bald
actually,
eagle right there, actually, in those trees as
about
well.
100 years ago, that was the home of the Bel Air Little League.
Bel Air Little League, that's right.
And there was a fence there. It was real baseball dugouts and
Yeah.
fences, and home runs could come right out into the street and.
I personally like it that I never have to actually look at a neighbor. When I sit on the front porch, I don't see anybody. It's nice.
Yeah, the games are long gone, and,
It's a nice property. I do like it. I mean, it's just older. It needs a lot of updating, but that comes with time.
yeah.
Liz?
Madam Chair and members of the commission, legal counsel wants to point two issues out of legal concern to the town. First of all, the applicant's site plan shows an encroachment onto the town's property. The applicant filed a permit in February to install picket fence. He had a survey that showed that the picket fence was going to be inside his property line. It's my recommendation as legal counsel for the town of Bel Air that this planning commission, if it's going to approve the application, make a requirement that the applicant remove his fence back onto his property and take it off the town. Another issue that cropped up recently, when I had a chance to take a look at this, there seems to be some discrepancy on the square footage based on what the planning commission has. He does not meet the criteria. He is over the 50% for an accessory dwelling. He's a non-conforming use. And non-conforming uses are very special criterias under zoning laws. And there's lots of case law having to do with that have to do with when they change the use. What does that mean? Right now, he's approved for a garage. He's disclosed in the public record that he's actually got an illegal dwelling in there. As far as we're concerned, as far as we know, because we haven't inspected it, it's a garage. It does not meet the requirements of the code right now. So if he ceases that use, he has to bring it into compliance with the code. There is actually a case directly on point out of Montgomery County that basically says, even if you don't change the footprint of the building, you must bring it into compliance. So, widespread, sort of forest through the trees, because, he's got a particular agenda and he's one tree within the forest. If someone, such as a neighbor or someone else, files an appeal and this planning commission grants the request, it is not likely that the circuit court would uphold any approval based on current Maryland law.
So if, from the standpoint of the accessory dwelling unit, when we developed the initiative, was that to build a new building or or to reutilize a building that already exists?
Either when.
Either.
Correct.
So in his case, and I don't know how far over he is, but let's say he's 10% of it. So if he takes out 87 square feet and doesn't utilize that for housing, so to speak, or his apartment for his kid, and uses it for storage, is that legitimate? Just like with Decker's Liquors, when they were
close to the
within
school.
1,000 feet of the school, 25 square feet of their cooler, they couldn't store beer in, that's where they stored their sodas supposedly. So my question is, the dwelling already exists, he's just trying to utilize the dwelling. He's not going out of his way to make something bigger that, and try to get, circumvent the rule. So in his case, if he were to block off, say, 87 square feet, does that suffice? If that were the case, I'm just throwing the numbers out.
Hypothetically speaking, okay, Mr. Small has the power to make interpretations based on the facts. Part of my huge concern with this case is the ambiguity in this application. The numbers that are being utilized by all of us standing here, I mean, he can't even tell us what the square footage is, as his surveyor didn't do it, and which is a shame because you paid him, and he should have done it. But the department is relying on the public records and probably their permit application filed from 1995 to get those square footages. And it all keys back to whether or not he is within that ratio, right? Because if he's not, then it doesn't apply, right? You'd be okay. But if it does, or Kevin makes an interpretation and says, okay, and I'm going to inspect this half story, right? Say it's, for lack of a better term, an attic crawl space, right? You can barely stand up in it. I mean, he says you can stand up in it, but, and he's pretty big. So,
You can stand in the center.
yeah.
Where would this go from a legal standpoint and a compliance standpoint if he connected the two buildings in some way?
That was something that Kevin and I
we
had
talked about.
discussed. That was something that we talked about. I think you were going to check on it.
Yes, and
Okay.
I was kind of waiting for the
To see what
public to
happened.
weigh in and get
Sure.
a little bit further along.
And
But
I'd still like to hear what the neighbors.
So I had a
have to say.
builder.
Yeah, you're not being
But-
ignored.
I
just
had a
for the
builder
record.
come and tell me the same thing.
But
He
I'm-
Okay.
said if there's an issue, I can connect it to, but I thought, why do I need to spend 50 grand?
Wait a minute, who said that?
I had an actual builder come out.
Okay.
And-
He's the one that makes that determination, not the
Yeah,
builder.
so what you can do, if the square footage in the attic space for the principal dwelling is not enough to get you that 50% number, you can connect these two buildings with a breezeway. That's not 50 grand, that's not much at all. But that would be a way to call this entire property, or
One.
Both buildings would no longer be two buildings, they would be one building.
Correct.
And you would still need the accessory dwelling unit approval, because that applies whether you're in the same building or not. But this would allow you to kind of move forward with your plans by saying, okay, we're going to add this to it. But the problem is that without knowing what the square footage is,
Exactly.
it's difficult to understand.
Exactly. It's difficult to give even hypotheticals without all of the facts on it. I see your point, but even if we reduce that down, I don't know if that's accurate.
Again, I'm just asking.
Yeah, and again, Kevin could say, yeah, it's not usable space, it's just storage space or what have you. But it's a huge issue because I don't know what the neighbors are going to say. They could come up here and say it's the best thing since sliced bread. We're on YouTube. God knows how many of them are watching. But somebody could file an appeal, and they would likely be successful based on my research of this kind of situation. And so the other thing for the applicant who has a unique zoning issue is you're creating a record here. So you want to make sure it's done correctly and it's done right. So when you do sell your property, it's clear what is going on. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So,
I just am hesitant to build or waste resources for the sake of a legal, like connecting the two is
Right.
just a waste of resources.
if
I
he
don't-
says it's okay, yeah, or if you're below the 50%, more power to you. But right now, based on what the information we have, you're not. So,
To address your other concern about the fence being encroaching upon the city's property,
on the town's.
I hired CNC Fencing to put it up, and they did a survey, and then they said you should go back 2.5 feet just in case this came up, which is what I did.
Yeah, you should go back to them, because this is what Joe did. This is in your submittal. This is your quote-unquote site plan, and it shows the encroachment. It goes right off your property line. I want to see the front yard on Hall Street.
So this is an issue you're going to have to figure out.
Yeah,
So had we not had the site plan in front of us that showed the fence in the right-of-way, I don't think anybody would have noticed. It looks to be about a foot or two into the right-of-way. The problem is it's there, and it's
The right-of-way on Hall Street?
yes.
on, no, not Hall Street.
No, Maple. Is it Maple something? Maple View. Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Because he purposely went back 2.5 feet from where the property line was. They had it staked out, and then he came out and he said, hey, we should go back further just in case.
So
we
either
purposely
they
went
made a
back.
mistake, or he made a mistake. I don't know.
So
if
either
that-
one, someone made a mistake.
Somebody made a mistake,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
So that needs to get answered.
Fixed.
So
And that has nothing to do with the accessory dwelling unit. That's
Yeah.
just something means that we can't, I'm not sure whether these folks can go forward if there's an existing violation on the property.
It's funny because he had said, I think there may be a bus stop around here. We should go back an extra few feet. I said, sure,
Yeah.
let's do it. I didn't care.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
doesn't look
normally
like
we
it.
advise that, and that usually.
Because I had said, let's go all the way to the
Well,
line.
let's get back to the square footage. So we really don't want to do anything until we know what that square footage is, and that has to be determined by an engineer, not somebody measuring the house. Is that correct?
Yeah, it should be,
So certified
either
engineer.
Mr. Thompson would go have his folks measure the attic and the principal dwelling and the garage, and then provide those numbers back to the town.
And another question, with respect to the criteria, are your sons minors?
Some are not.
Okay, so the code requires that you have to produce evidence that there's an individual, I think it says rented or something of that, a lease. So how are you prepared to?
I'm not going to lease it to our oldest son. He's 22. He's just going to live there.
Okay, okay,
No, eventually, if there's a caregiver, years down the road, there might be a lease,
okay,
but that's years from now.
okay.
Would anyone else, citizen, like to speak to this? Neighbors? It's up to you. No? Okay.
Okay.
So it sounds like there's much that needs to be done before we can review this again.
Right, but you're gonna have to give him direction so that when he comes back next month, he's got
XYZ.
what he needs
what is
to
every-
be,
yeah.
to be in compliance. So
Okay.
I'm assuming that, I'll just go through this based on what
Mhm.
that he'll need to verify the square footage of the principal dwelling and of the garage. That he will verify the location of the fence along Mapleview. And then there's some other minor issues that we pointed out in our staff report that are more drafting than anything else. And then decide whether or not that breezeway, if the numbers don't work, should be shown on the plan. Because that's,
And-
Does the breezeway have to be open or closed?
can be either one,
Open or closed?
yeah. Yeah, it can be
So you could just-
open to the elements,
Okay.
yeah,
And then the issue with the fence,
right,
that has to be addressed.
right.
And the square footage should include the downstairs and the attic bedroom.
Right. So that needs to be put into a,
Well, I move the special development request be tabled for further consideration of first verification of the square foot area of each building and confirming the location of the fence in or not in the town right away.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Hines? Yea or nay?
Yeah,
Aye.
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 Chair
The-
votes aye as well. Are
The
you,
idea of a breezeway, that's not part of the motion, because that's totally up to you, but that might be a way out of this, to
That would
get-
be a last resort, in my opinion.
Okay,
It just
well,
seems like a
I
waste of
say, it's
money.
Totally up to you.
Sure.
But we're very rarely in the business of approving a non-conforming use in advance, knowing that we're doing it. That's not something we're particularly
Sure.
comfortable with.
just as a matter of, and this doesn't need to be part of the approval, but how is your opinion on the parking? Is it good for the way it is now? There's no additional spaces are needed?
Yeah, I have no problem with the project in and of itself,
Okay.
from a parking standpoint or anything else, other than satisfying the easement aspect of things. The 50%, that's just a number that has to be dealt with, so.
Well, and there is an option here. If he
I guess
gets-
we back up for a
Go ahead.
second. At some point, for a garage, because I know there's certain rules throughout the county, on certain towns the same way, you can't build a garage bigger than the primary structure. So
Right.
was it non-conforming, or let's put it this way, when was it conforming? And then when did it become non-conforming?
As you know, the town has spotty records when it goes back to the 1990s. So our assumption is that it was to code when it was built,
Okay.
but
It's not to code.
the 50% came later and made that non-conforming.
All right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome to stay. We're going to continue with the meeting. So the project status update.
No, I'm not gonna be here tomorrow.
Project status.
All right.
Nobody cares about
Project status, not a whole lot has happened. We have gotten submissions relative to Taco Bell.
Hey.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. It's a Taco Bell.
Yes, Taco Bell came back and they want to submit, that was actually Frederick Ward, they wanted to submit. So I reminded them that you guys had opinions on the elevations of Taco Bell, which they have not addressed yet. So those still need to happen. And they realize that, so they're going to come back. I did get an email that I have not looked at from the architect, and I will take a look at that and probably ended up forwarding that to Mr. Edmeades for review.
What did we approve down there? I know we approved some of it, right?
Well, you got them to put brick on the building,
Right.
but then they have a freezer behind the building, or a walk-in something rather,
It faces Chili's.
that faces Chili's, which is
That
their
I
front.
wanted windows at, but they agreed to put a painting or a mural or something to
Right.
make it softer.
Put Betsy on there. So, yeah.
Hey, that'd be great.
So, so that's something like I said, I have not seen yet. But, I mean, they're relatively close. I think they took care of a lot of the other site plan related issues. They still owe Liz a development agreement, which brings them all in under the same roof as far as zoning violations or any other issues. Then you've got Chick-fil-A will be submitting their plans tomorrow for the drive-through, which working with them and Bowler has been great. They're very easy to work with. And then Raising Cane's has been slower. They have been difficult to move things along, but you know, that's their problem, not ours. So they still need to do several items related to stormwater management, and they have not done that yet. And hopefully they'll work their way through the process. As far as I'm concerned, as far as zoning is concerned, I think they're relatively clean as far as their submission goes. They had to lower their lighting next to the residences in the back. They had to show, they were pushing back on wanting to do, I think I sent you a copy of what they were pushing back on. One was they wanted to illuminate the signs and the mural on the back, and I said, no, all that's done is facing the residences. That's useless to you, and all it does is bother the neighbors. So I think they've are going to adhere to that. So that's Raising Cane's. The Hartford Mall is still working through several off-site issues related to utilities. I think we've cleared the path for them to be able to correct their utilities. Hickory Flats has has submitted their public works agreement, and that'll be in front of the town board next Monday. I don't think there's much after that needs to be reviewed. What else? Standard on Bond, they're still working on their plans. They're trying to get their final plans addressed, but I think they're a ways off.
Final on May 4th, but it'll hold over to the 6th. They go final on their appeal.
Right. Yeah, so in a couple of days, that approval will be final. What else? I'm sorry? Oh, Chabad? Yeah, Chabad has not done anything. I'm not sure they're going to be back. They're going to be coming up to their, you guys gave them an extension of 1 year. They're coming up to that extension here pretty soon. Wellwood, which is the assisted living on South Main Street, has not submitted their final plan. However, they've been dealing with State Highway. And State Highway takes forever to get their approvals through. They send their plans out to like 8 or 9 different arms of their agency, and they all have to give their approval. So they're plodding along, but and they did indicate they're probably going to do just one building as the first phase, and then come back in and do another building later. As far as we're concerned, that's fine. As long as the stormwater management and all the other criteria associated with both buildings are done in phase 1. What else? Can't think of anything else.
Heinz official opening is tomorrow,
Yeah.
11 o'clock. And
Yep.
now, where the house right beside Miss Fritz, her, she lived there for years. Anyway, that's so that they could extend that, area so the trucks did not have to sit out on Broadway. Now, what, is that still on hold because of, the appeal, or what's
They
happening?
initially submitted plans to actually not extend the loading dock, but reseat it. And therefore, the trucks would not sit
Right.
out there and go into the road like you were describing.
Mhm.
However, they have done work on the other side of the building, on the, what would be Gordon Street side. And I don't, to be honest, I don't know whether or not that's taking the place of the Broadway side.
Mm.
I hope it doesn't, because I think this is something that's needed. That way they're not blocking traffic every morning,
Right.
Mm.
so.
So what, did you ask them, Kevin, about the striping of the ingress egress on Long Main Street for
Yes,
pedestrian?
they told me they were gonna get back to me, which tells me that they're, I did basically said, look, if you can just provide the striping while you're doing it, that would be
Yeah.
appreciated. I don't know whether that ever made it to the contractor. I doubt it did.
I was
So.
really hoping they'd take the islands and put
Hmm.
trees, but that didn't happen.
No.
No.
Now, there's a limited amount of requirement I can place upon them, because they're not doing that much work. They're refacing the thing, doing interior, but they're not adding anything. So it's tough for me to come in and ask for landscape islands, things like that.
Sure. What about the parking lot for IBC? You know, I thought that was a long time ago they told that there had to be.
They came in, talked to the town. They I believe, fully intend on doing work that will make the area across the street their parking lot, rather than when I say across the street, across Main Street. And then they'll have to decide what to do with the parking lot next to Ellendale. The Ellendale parking lot has not gotten stormwater management, has not gotten landscape, hasn't gotten lighting, is not paved except for gravel. So that's something that has to go back to its original condition prior to the temporary use.
And that was grass?
But it was partially grass, partially gravel, and there was a building on it. But that is something that some decisions need to be made, but they're still under that temporary use that was granted during COVID, and it's kind of extended out, through this year.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I can't think of any other ones that are coming down the pike. It's likely you're going to get another accessory dwelling unit next month.
Mm.
So, that is coming. I don't, because there's 5 Thursdays, the deadline for any new submissions is next Thursday. That's the only one I know that has already submitted.
Hold on.
Huh?
Madam Chair, I want to make a comment, if that's okay.
Sure.
All
Sure.
right. I watched the 423 work meeting of the town commissioners, and I have no problem with how everything went down. Though I do have a problem with, I think, is a misnomer on our powers here. And one of the things that was stated by Mr. Rutledge is that the planning commission has awesome powers. And we don't have awesome powers. All we're charged with is, when a project comes to us, does it meet the standards and the codes that have been established by the town?
Bingo.
And we vote either yes or we vote no.
Right.
And for us to vote no and say, to me, awesome powers says that we come in, a project comes in and says, nope, you can't do it, even though the law says that they can. That's, to me, is an awesome power. Do we have certain powers? Yes, we do. We had the power, and I was the one that made the motion to put windows in the back of the drive-through of McDonald's. Why? Because I didn't want to see the back of a building for 25 or 30 years that was facing Route 1 that I thought needed windows to look like a storefront. I don't know that that's considered an awesome power. I know that McDonald's, when I suggested it, said that we would confuse customers and things like that, but I don't think we ever confuse customers. I just think that there's a misconception here that the planning commission has superpowers to do things that we don't. You know, a plan comes in, and we look at the plan to make sure it works. I mean, I don't like Henry Flats only because of the color. I'm not saying they can't build it, but I don't like the color, and I voted no because of the color, not because of the fact that they can or can't do it. So, I just want to put that out there for the town and for the public that's listening, because I remember when we were going with Hartford Mall. Not that I particularly care for the Hartford Mall project, but you know what? I told the audience at the time, and I remember the lady, what are we doing here? When we said that basically they can build it. Okay, we may not like it, but that's something that they can do, that they can build it. And we as the planning commission has to say, yeah, you can build it, but it's gotta be this, this, and this, not however. I mean, not just coming through and doing it. So I'm just putting it out there
Yeah.
that we don't have awesome powers, that we're here to make sure that the town code and the laws of the town are followed. And candidly, in the old days, one of the things most of the motions we said was we were recommending it to the town board. And the town board got an awful lot of things from the planning commission until they figured out the planning commission knows what they're doing, and they don't need everything to come before the town board for a second approval, so to speak. So, just putting it out there.
Very good.
Lois,
Yes.
I want to comment too, and I want to comment on Keith Powell's not returning to the planning commission. Regrettably, Keith is not being reappointed for a 7th or 8th term. I don't know how whether it's a 7th or 8th. We're losing, 8th?
I think it's 8.
Yeah. So we're losing a knowledgeable and experienced member of our team. Volunteerism isn't what it has been in the past in Bel Air. There's a new procedure that dictates a volunteer has to fill out a form, whether one is seeking to volunteer or if a volunteer would like to be considered for reappointment. Then there are certain boards, commissions, and committees where additionally, all interested parties must be interviewed by the town board. Based upon these criteria, a volunteer is then selected. The Planning Commission is one of the interview groups. Keith filled out the form, but rather than be interviewed, he told the town board he would let his record speak for itself. The town board refused his request, and he was left off the slate that was voted upon at the recent work session. Now, I'm not sure what you could possibly ask a volunteer who has given 35 years of service on the same commission to the town. Maybe, hey, how's it going? Why would you even expect a 35-year volunteer to compete for his or her seat if they so desired to continue serving? I'd like to commend our chairperson, Lois, for speaking that night in Keith's behalf at that work session. I can't speak for the other people in the Planning Commission, but I totally agree with your comments that night and tonight. And I'd just like to thank Keith for his many years of service and wish him well. With that, Madam Chair, I'll move to adjourn.
Hearing nothing else? Second.
Adjourn.
What is, for me, the most upsetting, to add insult to injury, was that luckily we received wind that he was no longer going to be a part of this commission. So that, I don't know whether the rest of you did, but I at least called Keith, because he had planned on being here this evening. And he said, I'm going to be attending, I guess I haven't heard anything, they don't want me, so I'm assuming that the May meeting will be my last one. Luckily, I saved him the embarrassment of walking in here this evening and seeing that his position had been replaced. That to me is unacceptable.